The kingdom of Eloria lay under a sky that never fully surrendered to day or night. Twilight hung like a velvet curtain over the spires of the castle, and the air carried a soft, almost magical chill. Within its grand halls, whispers of prophecy floated like mist, rumors that had been spoken for centuries. Every generation, the Alpha King would choose a bride from among the royal sisters to bind their bloodline and strengthen the kingdom. Princess Lyanna, the eldest, was known for her beauty and grace. She moved with the confidence of someone who had been prepared all her life for this moment. The court favored her, and everyone expected her to be chosen. But her younger sister, Elara, lived in shadows. She was quiet, observant, and rarely sought attention. Her dark hair framed a pale face, her eyes seemed to hold unspoken thoughts, and she often found herself standing at the edges of the court, unnoticed. This year, the ritual was to take place in the Hall of Wolves, a sacred chamber lined with statues of past Alpha Kings, each one carved mid-roar, their eyes seeming to follow the participants. The air smelled faintly of pine and smoke, mingled with the scent of wax from countless candles. Noblemen and women gathered, holding their breath as the moment approached. Kaelin, the Alpha King, entered the hall silently, his presence commanding. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that brushed his shoulders and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly amber in the candlelight. Rumors said he was cursed, bound to the wolf bloodline for centuries. Some whispered that he could not love, that his heart was locked behind a wall of shadow. Yet all knew the power that lay behind his gaze. Lyanna curtsied deeply as he approached, her eyes bright with hope and anticipation. She had trained for this day, for this exact moment. But when Kaelin's gaze moved over her, something unexpected happened. He stopped. His eyes swept past Lyanna and landed on Elara. For a heartbeat, the hall fell silent. The world seemed to hold its breath. Elara felt it before she understood it, a pull so strong that it made her knees weak and her heart race. Kaelin's eyes burned into hers, and in that instant the air between them was electric. She wanted to look away, to hide, yet she could not. There was something ancient and raw in his gaze, something that reached into the depths of her soul. Kaelin moved closer, his boots echoing against the stone floor. "She's mine," he growled, his voice deep, low, and commanding. A collective gasp rose from the court. Whispers erupted like a storm. The ritual was meant for Lyanna. Everyone had expected her to be chosen. And yet Kaelin had spoken, declaring Elara the one. Lyanna's face turned pale, a mixture of shock, confusion, and hurt. She looked at her sister, then back at the Alpha King. "What?" she stammered. Elara's own mind was spinning. This could not be happening. She was not meant to stand in the center of the hall. She was the quiet one, the shadowed one. And yet Kaelin's gaze did not waver. His presence seemed to fill the entire room, and the air between them vibrated with unspoken promises and dangers. The King of Wolves extended his hand, not to Lyanna, but to Elara. She felt the warmth of it, the strength behind it, and the pull of something she could not yet name. Slowly, as if moving through a dream, she stepped forward. Every eye in the hall followed her, some in awe, some in fear, and some in anger. The ceremony continued, though the room's energy had shifted. The candles flickered as if stirred by some invisible wind, and the statues of past kings seemed almost alive. Kaelin did not release his hold on her gaze, and Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. She did not fully understand what was happening, but part of her knew that her life was changing forever. When the ritual ended, Kaelin led Elara to the private chambers at the edge of the castle. They walked in silence, each step heavy with unspoken tension. The hallways were lined with tapestries depicting great battles and ancient kings. Shadows danced across the stone walls as the flickering torches cast their light. Kaelin stopped in a chamber overlooking the cliffs, where the wind from the distant sea whipped at their hair. He turned to her, his eyes unreadable. "You are not like your sister," he said quietly, though his voice carried the weight of authority. "There is fire in you, something ancient and powerful. That is why I chose you." Elara shook her head, trying to resist the pull she felt toward him. "I am not worthy," she whispered. "I am not like her, I cannot." "You are more than worthy," Kaelin interrupted, stepping closer. "You are not the one they expected. That is exactly why you are the one I need. Your strength, your heart, it calls to me in ways I cannot ignore." Elara looked down, her hands trembling. She had never felt such attention, such recognition, and yet it terrified her. She had always lived in the shadow of her sister, never imagining that destiny might call to her instead. And now she felt caught in the pull of something dark, something dangerous, and yet exhilarating. Kaelin reached out and lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. In his eyes, she saw centuries of loneliness, battles fought, victories won, and sacrifices made. She saw a man trapped between his human heart and the beast within him. And she felt for the first time that she could touch that heart, that she could reach the man behind the wolf. "Do you understand?" he asked, his voice a low growl yet tender. Elara nodded, though her heart was still pounding. "I think so," she said softly. Kaelin's hand lingered on her cheek, and then, without warning, the chamber doors burst open. Lyanna stood there, her eyes wide with anger and disbelief. "Elara, how could he choose you over me?" Elara's voice caught in her throat. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, but the words would not come. She could feel the weight of her sister's gaze, the hurt and betrayal that lay behind it. She wanted to reach out to comfort her, but Kaelin's presence was magnetic, demanding her attention. Lyanna stepped forward, her hands trembling. "This was meant to be my destiny, my life, and you. You are not to blame," Kaelin said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension like steel. "This is not about rivalry, it is about truth. Elara was always meant for this." Lyanna's shoulders slumped, but her eyes still burned with hurt. Without another word, she turned and left, leaving a silence in her wake that was heavier than any words could carry. Elara sank onto a chair, her hands still shaking. I did not ask for this," she whispered. Kaelin knelt beside her, his eyes softening, though his presence still carried a dangerous intensity. "No one asks for destiny," he said gently, "but you have the strength to face it, and you will never be alone." The wind outside moaned through the cliffs, and the candlelight flickered as if echoing the storm within her heart. Elara realized that her life had changed forever. She had stepped out of the shadows and into a destiny that was dangerous, unknown, and yet intoxicating. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not for what she was supposed to be, but for what she truly was. And though fear gripped her, a strange excitement coursed through her veins. She could feel the pull of Kaelin's presence like a tide, drawing her in, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Kaelin stood, offering his hand again. "Come," he said. "The world is waiting, and it will not be gentle, but together we can face it." Elara took his hand, her own trembling as she met his gaze. In that moment, she understood the weight of her choice, the pull of her destiny, and the dangerous, exhilarating path that lay ahead. Outside, the twilight deepened, casting the castle in shadow and light. The wind whispered secrets of power, of curses, and of love that defied prophecy. And in the silent heart of the Hall of Wolves, two souls, bound by fate, fire, and unspoken desire, stood together, knowing that the journey had only just begun. The kingdom held its breath. The wind howled across the cliffs as Kaelin led Elara out of the castle and into the dark woods beyond the kingdom. The forest stretched like an endless sea of shadows, its trees twisted and tall, their branches reaching toward the sky like blackened fingers. The air smelled of earth, pine, and something faintly magical, as if the forest itself held secrets centuries old. Elara's heart raced, partly from fear, partly from the pull of Kaelin's presence beside her. She tried to walk steadily, but her hands shook, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward her, alive with movement she could not see. "Stay close," Kaelin said, his voice low, steady, and commanding. "The forest is not just trees and paths. It is old, older than this kingdom. There are forces here that even I respect." Elara nodded silently. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but words failed her in the presence of this strange, commanding man. She had only just begun to accept her place in the prophecy, and yet everything was moving too fast. Her world had shifted in a single day. The forest seemed to respond to them. Leaves rustled without wind, shadows shifted in ways that were unsettling yet strangely mesmerizing. Kaelin's amber eyes scanned constantly, alert, while Elara could only watch the darkness and wonder what lay beyond the next tree. After a while, they reached a clearing where the moonlight spilled like silver over a small pool of water. Kaelin stopped and turned to face her. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked. Elara frowned. "Feel what?" "The power within you," he said. His gaze was intense, searching. "It is awakening. That is why I chose you. There is something in your bloodline, something ancient. You are not meant to be a shadow. You are meant to be fire." Elara's fingers trembled. She had always known she was different from her sister, but she had never imagined that the difference was this powerful. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I don't know if I can." Kaelin stepped closer. You can and you will. But first you must trust yourself and trust me. The wind swirled around them, carrying with it a faint, almost musical whisper. Alara felt a strange warmth rise from within her chest, as if her heart itself was responding to the forest, to Kalen, to the magic that had always waited in her blood. Kalen reached out, placing his hand gently on hers. The moment their skin touched, a pulse of energy ran through her, bright and intense. She gasped and pulled back slightly. "What was that?" "Your power," he said softly. "It has always been there, now it begins to awaken, and with it comes danger." Alara swallowed hard. She wanted to feel excitement, to embrace this new part of herself, but fear weighed on her. She remembered her sister, waiting at the castle, the hurt in Lyanna's eyes. She remembered the court, the whispers, the prophecy. And now here she was in a forest of shadows, holding hands with a man she barely knew but could not stop thinking about. Kalen studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice quieter now. "You must learn control. Your magic is tied to your emotions, to your heart. If you cannot control it, it could destroy you, or worse, harm those you love." Alara nodded, even though her mind was a whirlwind. I want to learn," she said. Kalen smiled faintly, though his eyes remained serious. "Good. We begin at dawn. For now, rest. The forest will protect you, but only if you respect it." That night, Alara could not sleep. She sat by the pool, the moonlight reflecting on the water, her thoughts spinning. Kalen was strong, commanding, dangerous, yet she felt a strange safety with him. She wanted to understand him, to understand herself. And yet a small voice whispered doubt. What if she was not ready for this? Morning came, and the forest seemed alive in a new way. Birds that shone like silver darted through the trees. Light filtered through the branches, painting the ground with patterns of gold and shadow. Kalen began her training. "You must learn to focus," he said, standing before her. "Close your eyes, feel your power, do not think. Do not question, let it flow through you." Alara closed her eyes, her hands raised slightly. She concentrated, trying to feel the pulse within her. At first, there was nothing. Then slowly, a warmth spread from her chest down her arms, through her fingers. The leaves around her trembled slightly, and she opened her eyes in shock. Kalen nodded approvingly. "Good, now feel it without fear, let it grow." Days passed, and each day Alara learned more. Her magic was not like her sister's elegance or charm. It was wild, unpredictable, but strong. She could lift small objects with her mind, sense movements in the forest before they happened, and even hear the faint whispers of the creatures that lived among the shadows. Through it all, Kalen watched, guided, and protected. He showed her how to control her emotions, how to use her power as a tool and not as a weapon. And with each lesson, the bond between them grew stronger. One evening, as the sun set behind the forest, painting the sky in shades of red and purple, Kalen spoke again. "Alara," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. "You are more than I expected, more than anyone could have imagined, but there is still danger coming. The prophecy is not simple. Others know of it. Others will try to claim you." Alara shivered. "Who? Who would want to harm me?" Kalen's gaze darkened. "Enemies of the crown, creatures that live in the shadows, and even those closest to you. The forest will protect you, but only for so long. You must be ready to face them." Alara looked down, her hands clenching. Fear rose in her chest, but beneath it, something else began to grow, determination. She had been afraid, yes, but she was learning to be strong, to be more than a shadow in her sister's light. The following night, a strange feeling crept over the forest. The wind carried an icy chill, and the shadows deepened unnaturally. Alara's senses were on high alert. Kalen noticed immediately. "Something is coming," he said, his hand gripping hers tightly. "Stay close." From the darkness, a figure emerged, a shadowy wolf larger than any ordinary animal, its eyes glowing red. It moved with unnatural speed, circling them, teeth bared, growling low. Alara's heart pounded, but Kalen's presence was steady. "Do not panic," he said, his voice firm. "Focus, trust your instincts." Alara felt a surge of energy. She closed her eyes, reaching deep within, and a pulse of light erupted from her chest, scattering the shadows around the wolf. The creature yelped, retreating slightly, but it was not gone. Kalen stepped forward, his own eyes glowing amber. He shifted, and his form blurred. Fur sprouted along his body, his hands became claws, and in moments he stood as a massive wolf, powerful and fearsome. Alara gasped, a mix of awe and fear. "Kalen, focus, Alara," he growled. "You are stronger than you know." She reached out, letting her magic flow, and together they drove the creature back into the darkness. The wolf disappeared, leaving only a faint echo of its growl. Kalen returned to his human form, panting, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "You did well," he said. "Better than I expected." Alara's chest heaved, adrenaline coursing through her veins. I think I'm ready," she whispered. Kalen knelt before her, his gaze intense. "Ready or not, this is only the beginning. The world outside this forest will test you in ways you cannot imagine, but together we will face it." The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of danger and power. Alara understood in that moment that her life had truly changed. She had stepped into a world of shadows and magic, of prophecy and destiny. And she had done so not alone, but with the Alpha King, whose presence was both terrifying and irresistible. As the moon rose high, casting silver light through the trees, Alara and Kalen stood side by side, ready to face the coming storm. The forest was quiet once more, but both knew that the shadows were only waiting, watching, and that their journey had only begun. And somewhere in the darkness, eyes glowed, waiting for the right moment to strike. Alara shivered, not from cold, but from anticipation. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with enemies, tests, and choices she could not yet understand, yet for the first time she felt alive. Alive, the castle of Aloria had changed since the day Kalen had chosen Alara over Lyanna. Whispers lingered in the corridors, like shadows that would not leave. Some nobles whispered of curses and omens, others of anger and jealousy. Yet for Alara, nothing had ever felt more real than the tension that wrapped around her heart, between fear, duty, and the strange, overwhelming pull she felt toward Kalen. She had returned to the castle with him, though not as a prisoner, but as someone bound by destiny. Kalen walked beside her, his presence both protective and commanding. His amber eyes scanned every corner of the halls, alert for enemies she could not see. Alara felt safer with him, yet also aware that she was stepping further into a world of danger and secrets. Lyanna's presence had grown colder since the ritual. She moved through the castle like a shadow, her smiles polite but forced. There was a bitterness in her eyes, a fire that refused to be quenched. Alara tried to speak with her, to bridge the gap between sisterly love and jealousy, but each attempt ended in silence. Lyanna would turn away, leaving Alara to feel both guilt and sorrow. "You cannot let her shadow you," Kalen said one evening as they walked along the castle ramparts, the wind whipping their cloaks around them. "You are your own person. You are not Lyanna. You are Alara, and you have power, strength, and fire she cannot understand." Alara shivered, not from the cold, but from the truth in his words. She had always compared herself to her sister, always measured herself against the grace and charm that Lyanna carried effortlessly. But now, standing beside Kalen, she realized she was something else entirely. Something stronger. Days passed, and with each one the tension between the sisters grew. Lyanna was no longer content to remain in the shadows. She began to move quietly, speaking to certain nobles, gathering information, and making subtle alliances. Alara sensed the shift, though she did not yet understand the full weight of her sister's intentions. Then one night, a messenger arrived, panting and covered in mud. He handed Kalen a sealed letter, the wax stamped with a symbol that made Alara's stomach twist. Kalen broke the seal and read it in silence. His jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. "They know," he said finally, his voice low and dangerous. "The enemies of the crown, they know about you, about your awakening power, and they are coming." Alara felt a chill run down her spine. "Enemies? Who are they?" Kalen did not answer immediately. He folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. "They are shadows in the court, creatures that hide in plain sight, and they will use anyone to get to you, including your sister." Alara's heart sank. She could not believe Lyanna would betray her, yet the weight of Kalen's words was undeniable. Her sister's bitterness and jealousy were real, and now they had a dangerous purpose. The next day, the castle felt different. Shadows seemed deeper, corners darker, and the air heavier. Alara trained with Kalen in a hidden chamber beneath the castle, practicing control over her magic. Every spark of power, every flicker of energy felt alive, as if it were watching her, judging her, waiting for her to falter. "You are improving," Kalen said, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "But you must be careful. Your power is strong, but it is also tied to your emotions. If anger, fear, or jealousy take hold, it can consume you." Alara nodded, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She kept seeing Lyanna's face, the coldness in her eyes, the subtle smirk that suggested plans Alara could not yet see. She wondered if her sister could ever forgive her, or if jealousy had already poisoned her heart completely. That night, Alara was restless. She wandered the halls alone, moving silently so as not to be seen. The moonlight poured through the windows, painting the stone floors silver and shadow. She felt a strange pull, a whisper in the air that seemed to call her toward the throne room. When she arrived, she saw a figure moving in the shadows. Her heart leapt, part fear, part relief. "Lyanna," she whispered. The figure stepped into the light, and Alara's blood ran cold. It was her sister, but there was a strange intensity in her eyes, and she held a small vial that glimmered with dark liquid. "You think you are the chosen one?" Lyanna said, her voice soft, yet sharp like a blade. "But power does not come without cost. And you will pay for taking what was mine." Alara's heart pounded. She took a step back, but her sister advanced. "Lyanna, I don't want to fight you," she said, her voice trembling. "Please don't do this." Lyanna laughed softly, a sound that was beautiful yet bitter. "You have what I wanted, but power is not given, it is taken, and if you cannot handle it, you will fall." Before Alara could respond, Kalen appeared at the doorway. His eyes glowed amber, his presence commanding. "Step back," he warned, his voice like steel. "Do not force me to act against her." Lyanna paused, her eyes narrowing. "You are mine," Kalen said, turning to Alara, his words like a vow. "And no one, not even your own blood, will take you from me." Alara felt a surge of warmth at his words, a strange mixture of comfort and power. She stepped forward, feeling her magic stir within her, bright and alive. She reached out, letting it flow, and the room seemed to shimmer with light. Lyanna staggered back, surprised by the intensity of Alara's power. This cannot be," she whispered. "You are not ready for this." Kalen moved closer, standing protectively beside Alara. "You are ready," he said firmly, "and you will not face this alone." Lyanna's eyes filled with tears, but there was also anger, frustration, and heartbreak. "I loved you, Alara," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I wanted only what was right for you, but now I see that fate has chosen differently, and I cannot accept it." With a cry of despair, she vanished into the shadows, leaving only a faint echo of her footsteps. The air felt colder, the room darker, and Alara shivered, realizing the depth of the betrayal. Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder. "She is angry, yes, but not lost. Yet you must be prepared. She will come again, and when she does, she may not be alone." Alara nodded, her chest heavy with sorrow. She had never imagined that her journey would bring conflict not only from enemies of the kingdom, but from the person she had loved most, her own sister. And yet, beneath the fear and sadness, there was a spark of determination. She had grown stronger, and she would not falter. The next days passed with tense training and cautious vigilance. The castle seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Kalen taught her new ways to control her magic, ways to blend strength and subtlety, to strike and defend, and to sense danger before it arrived. But Alara also began to sense the toll on Kalen himself. His amber eyes sometimes glowed with a darker intensity, his jaw tightened, and his patience frayed ever so slightly. She realized that the curse that bound him to the wolf bloodline was not just a legend. It was a weight he carried, one that made him both powerful and dangerous. One evening, as they trained in the courtyard beneath the rising moon, a shadow moved among the trees. Kalen froze, his senses alert, his body tensing like a spring. "They are here," he said, his voice low and urgent. Alara felt her heart race, but she did not back down. She focused, feeling the magic within her pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The shadows shifted, and she saw them, figures cloaked in darkness, moving silently, their eyes gleaming with malice. Kalen shifted, his form blurring as fur sprouted along his arms, his body growing taller, more formidable. He was a wolf now, fearsome and powerful, his amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Stay behind me," he growled. Alara did not step back. She let her magic flow, a bright, pulsing light that scattered the shadows and forced the attackers to hesitate. Together, they stood, united, facing the unseen threat with courage and power. The attackers vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of their presence. Kalen returned to human form, panting, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said, "and the danger is far from over." Alara nodded, her chest heaving. "I know," she whispered, "but I will not run. I will face this, whatever comes." Kalen smiled faintly, his hand brushing her hair from her face. "Good, because the world outside these walls will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine, and your sister, she is only the beginning." The wind stirred, carrying whispers of prophecy, power, and betrayal. Ilara understood now that her journey had become more than just destiny. It had become a test of her heart, her strength, and the bonds she held with those she loved. And somewhere in the shadows, eyes glowed, waiting, watching, and planning. Ilara shivered not from fear but from anticipation. The trials ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies, betrayal, and choices that could change everything. Yet for the first time, she felt certain of one thing: she was not alone. She had Kaelin. And together they could face whatever darkness awaited. The castle held its breath, and so did Ilara. The kingdom of Eloria was silent under the blood-red moon. Shadows stretched long across the castle walls, and the air was thick with tension. Ilara stood at the edge of the cliffs, the wind whipping her dark hair across her face. Beside her, Kaelin's presence was steady, yet charged with a dangerous energy that seemed to hum in the night. Tonight, everything would come to a head. The prophecy, the curse, the betrayal of her sister, it would all demand resolution. Ilara could feel the magic in the air, a force older than the kingdom, pulsing like a heartbeat that connected her, Kaelin, and the fate of Eloria itself. "You are ready," Kaelin said, his voice low and steady. "Tonight will test you, but it is also your chance to claim your destiny." Ilara nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. She had grown stronger over the past weeks, learned to control her magic, and accepted her power. But nothing could have prepared her for the weight of what was to come. The forest and the shadows had taught her lessons, yes, but the world beyond, where love, loyalty, and betrayal collided, was far more dangerous. From the castle, a figure emerged, Lyanna. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and her hands trembled. She had been planning, scheming, gathering allies and knowledge, but tonight she faced the consequences of her choices. "Ilara," Lyanna said, her voice shaking. I did not mean for it to go this far. I thought I could protect you, protect the kingdom, but you betrayed me," Ilara said softly, her voice firm but not unkind. "You let anger and jealousy guide you, and now everything is at risk." Lyanna's gaze fell. "I know," she whispered. "I see it now. I see that the prophecy, that it is not just about who is chosen. It is about love, sacrifice, and strength, and I was blinded." Kaelin's eyes softened slightly as he stepped forward. "It is not too late," he said, "but we must act quickly. The curse, the shadows, the enemies, they are gathering. The eclipse will reach its peak soon, and with it all will be revealed." Ilara felt her chest tighten. The eclipse. She had felt its pull for days, a tension in the air, a rhythm in her heartbeat that matched the pulse of the world itself. Tonight, the blood-red moon would reach its highest point, and the prophecy would demand a choice, a test of power, love, and courage. Together, the three of them moved toward the central courtyard, where the ritual circle awaited. Ancient symbols were etched into the stone, glowing faintly with magic that had not been disturbed for centuries. The air shimmered, charged with energy. Ilara stepped into the center of the circle. Kaelin moved beside her, his presence a shield and a spark all at once. Lyanna hesitated at the edge, torn between fear, guilt, and a desire to make amends. "You must embrace your power," Kaelin said. "Let it flow through you, and let it unite with mine. Only together can we break the curse and face the darkness." Ilara closed her eyes. She could feel the energy inside her, the fire she had always carried, waiting to be unleashed. She reached out with her magic, letting it pulse outward. The circle glowed brighter, and the wind stirred, carrying whispers of the past and the echoes of generations long gone. Lyanna stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on the edge of the circle. "I want to help," she said softly. I want to make this right." Ilara hesitated, then nodded. "Together," she whispered. "We face it together." Kaelin's amber eyes met hers. "Focus, trust yourself, trust us." The shadows around the courtyard thickened, twisting into forms that were both familiar and terrifying. Figures of darkness, born from the fears and hatred of centuries, moved closer. The air grew cold, and the moonlight turned crimson, bathing everything in its eerie glow. One of the shadow creatures lunged toward Ilara, its claws sharp and its eyes filled with malice. She raised her hands, and a burst of energy shot forth, scattering it. Another approached, faster, stronger, and she felt her power strain against the force. Kaelin moved like a storm beside her, his strength both human and wolf, striking with precision and ferocity. His amber eyes glowed as he fought, yet he never lost sight of Ilara, protecting her even as he battled the darkness. Lyanna joined in, her own courage and newly awakened strength guiding her. Together, the three of them formed a circle of light and power, holding the shadows at bay. "You are stronger than I imagined," Kaelin said as they fought. "Ilara, you are more than a chosen one. You are a force of nature." Ilara's heart raced. I am not alone," she whispered, "and I am not afraid." The shadows recoiled, their forms writhing as the combined magic of the sisters and Kaelin pressed against them. The eclipse reached its peak, and the moon glowed blood-red, illuminating the courtyard in a light that was both terrifying and beautiful. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, taller, stronger, and more menacing than any shadow they had faced. It was the spirit of the ancient curse, a being that had haunted the Alpha Kings for centuries. Its eyes glowed with malice and its voice rumbled like thunder. "You cannot break me," it said. "You are mortal. Your love, your strength, it is not enough." Ilara stepped forward, her chest heaving, her magic pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "We are stronger than you know," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "And love is the power you cannot understand." Kaelin's hand found hers, and together they let their magic flow, intertwining their energies. Lyanna added her own, her voice trembling but determined. The circle of power glowed brighter, the symbols etched in the stone shining like stars. The spirit of the curse roared, lashing out with dark energy, but the combined force of the three held firm. Light met shadow, power met malice, and the clash shook the very ground beneath them. Ilara felt the magic within her surge, stronger than ever before. She opened her eyes, and the light burst outward, pushing the darkness back, scattering the shadows like mist in the wind. The spirit of the curse shrieked, its form unraveling under the power of unity, love, and determination. Kaelin's amber eyes softened as he watched her, pride and awe shining in their depths. "You did it," he whispered. Lyanna stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I am sorry," she said. "I see now it was never about who was chosen. It was about courage, heart, and unity." Ilara nodded, her chest heaving. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but we must remember power is responsibility, and together we are stronger than we ever imagined." The blood-red moon began to fade, and the eclipse ended. The courtyard was calm once more, bathed in the gentle light of dawn. Shadows had been defeated, the curse broken, and the kingdom safe for now. Kaelin reached for Ilara's hand, lifting it to his lips. "You are mine," he said, his voice both gentle and commanding. "And nothing will ever change that." Ilara smiled, her heart full. "And you are mine," she whispered back, her voice steady and certain. "In this life and whatever comes after." Lyanna watched them, a soft smile on her face, a mixture of relief and understanding. She had been wrong, yes, but she had learned that love and courage were stronger than jealousy and fear. She would find her own path, but she would never forget the bond she shared with her sister. The kingdom of Eloria began to wake, the sun rising over the cliffs and forests, casting light on the castle and the people who lived within it. For the first time in centuries, there was hope. Not just for the royal bloodline, not just for the Alpha King, but for everyone who had lived in the shadow of prophecy, fear, and ancient curses. Ilara stood beside Kaelin, looking out over the kingdom. Her heart was strong, her magic under control, and her soul free. She had faced betrayal, danger, and shadows, and she had emerged stronger. And though challenges would always come, she knew one thing: together she and Kaelin could face anything. Together they were unbreakable. The wind stirred, gentle and soft now, carrying the promise of a new beginning. The castle, the forest, the cliffs, they were all witnesses to the dawn of a new era. Ilara smiled, her heart light, her eyes shining with determination. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. Kaelin pulled her close, his amber eyes filled with warmth and fire. "And we will face it together," he said, his voice a vow that would echo through the ages. The blood-red moon was gone, replaced by the golden light of dawn. Shadows had passed. Love, courage, and strength had prevailed, and in the heart of Eloria, destiny had found its true path. Ilara breathed in the morning air, feeling alive, powerful, and free. She was no longer a shadow. She was the light that would guide the kingdom, the heart that would lead, and the soul that would never falter. The kingdom held its breath no more.